Good night, and welcome to the Living Well show, where we have holistic conversations that inspire healing, hope, and transformation with your host, Dr. Albert and Shanique Tompkins.
Good night. I'm Dr. Albert.
And I am Shanique. It's great to be back with you on the Living Well show. And Happy New Year to those that I haven't said Happy New Year to.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So we thank you for joining us on today. We are looking forward to a lively conversation about a topic that is important in our community, dealing with mental health and dealing with faith. And how do they merge? Is there an intersection? Can you have one without the other? Do you really need both? Tonight's guest is going to help us break that down and show us which path to take as people of faith, as well as human beings who live in this natural world. And sometimes we need therapy, okay? More than just a little bit of prayer. So, Albert, go ahead and introduce our guest.
Yes, tonight we have a great topic. And as you said, we are still in the pandemic. And how is our faith during this pandemic? We're going to talk about that tonight and how therapy can play with that. So tonight we have an expert to help us with that. We have our very own Dr. LaQuetta Solomon, and she is an emotional intelligence consultant coach. She's a mentor. She's a licensed clinical social worker and a psychotherapist that's provided exemplary mental and emotional health services in various levels. She's also the visionary and founder of Perspectives Consultation Services, PLLC. And Dr. Solomon utilizes an eclectic and holistic approach to assist in regaining and obtaining mental and emotional stability. She offers an array of services, support, and guidance for those strengthen those their faith and consultation in terms of mental and emotional healing through specialization in Christian counseling. Now that's an oxymoron, right? Dr. Solomon is a national trainer for mental health first aid. Yay, that's a great thing. And she also developed a criteria and facilitated workshops on topics such as mental health and the church, emotional healing, and bridging the gap between mental health and faith, women's issues, and an array of other issues. She also serves as a consultant for clergy across New York on the congregate mental health and substance abuse issues. So good night and welcome, Dr. Solomon, to the Living Well show. Go ahead and greet the people, please.
Good night, everyone. And I am so elated to be with you all and talk about a subject that is dear to my heart. I wish I was with you all because I'm quite sure the weather is much better there than it is here in New York. We had a huge blizzard.
So yes, we saw. We were watching it from afar.
Creeping out of our caves of 2.5 feet. But it is still an honor and a pleasure to be with you all tonight.
Yes, we're excited about it, and I don't miss that snow personally. But anyway, God is good. So let's just jump into it because, again, I think this is so relevant. I've done some work between mental health and faith, and it's such a great topic because people have so many different ideas and perspectives, but I believe it's necessary. So, Dr. Solomon, please tell us about your journey in terms of mixing faith and therapy, and how do you combine the two?
Well, I believe this is a God-given passion. And what I mean by that, I feel as if this was something that I was ordained ever since a little child to do because my mother was always in ministry, serving in ministry. My godparents, I was always surrounded by first families in ministry, in addition to just understanding how faith was an integral part of my walk and my journey. And God allowed me and gifted me to go up the secular mountain of education as it relates to getting a bachelor's in social work, a master's in social work, a master's in Christian ministries, and a doctorate, and really combining the two because I believe in our communities, faith is so important to us. That's our coping skill. That's our coping mechanism. And understanding that component and being that our spiritual wellness and our mental wellness, along with physical wellness. And there's all on a conundrum of the 8 dimensions of wellness. And so understanding that in our communities, because faith is so important, we needed to understand how our faith can serve in the area of mental health, and how understanding mental health is so integral to our faith. And we're going to talk about that, because there are strongholds that can be also involved in our physical health, in our mental health, that our spiritual health can't even break through because we stay in denial about some things. And so this has been such a passion for me, that this is what my dissertation was actually about. Equipping African American pastors with strategies to deal with their congregants in mental distress, because there's such a need, because in our communities, mental health is not the devil. And so prayer and therapy, as one of my colleagues actually indicates, they can coexist. And we can go back into the psychological concept of the Lord Jesus Christ, some of his disciples, some of the characters. They were dealing with some mental health issues and mental health uncomfortability, and understanding that we're no different, but they gave us the blueprint. And we have to be able to dismantle the stigma that is associated with that in our communities in order to really, really be free in this season.
Wow, that was a powerful introduction and explanation on faith and mental health therapy. You touched on something. You said that when we, as believers, people, church people, they feel like you have faith or you go to a counselor. Why do you think we have that stigma in Christianity? Why do you
I
think
think
that if we're lacking faith if we go to see a counselor?
I believe it's instrumental to understand the stigma associated with mental health. And let's go all the way back to slavery. Let's go all the way back to the dismantling of our social, our self-esteem, our social relationships, our interpersonal relationships. Our ancestors went through so much, and we wanted to show them that we were to be strong, and to not let them break our stride. Well, on the outside exterior, we exemplified that, but it was seen as weakness when we exemplified any type of emotion that was contrary to being strong. And I believe some of that generational behavior and patterns have transcended down to our generations. And if we don't stop it, it will continue. And so that stigma of us understanding that the brain can get sick just like any other organ is very foreign, because what we do is we spiritualize everything, but we forgot we're mind, body, soul, and spirit. We're interconnected. So if we often in our communities, we spiritualize mental health issues. I'm not even talking about mental illness, because mental health issues is just basically your mental well-being, how your thought processes. And oftentimes we even confuse mental health with emotional health. And it's two different concepts. And so I think this stigma has been transcended down throughout the generations, with us not really understanding, again, that the brain can get sick like any other organ. And it's been acceptable for the heart to get sick, lungs to get sick, kidneys to get sick. But that brain, because we think of that as something that's outside, that's in our control, and the other areas are out of our control. But it's out of our control if we don't understand that the brain can get ill.
Yeah. Great response. And I think you're right. And I want you to break that down a little bit, because I think it's important to understand the difference between, you said, emotional illness and mental illness. Break that down a little bit so that our audience can understand that, because there may be a misconception that they're actually the same. So please help us with that.
Okay, so when we talk about the field of mental health, and we're on the last day, is today the 31st? This is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. And so when we talk about being aware of mental health, it's really bringing exposure to the impact of mental health. That's our well-being. That's about our thought processes, our cognition, how we see things, our core beliefs of that actually really resonate in regards to how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about others. It's our thought processes. When we're talking about emotional health, we're talking about how we respond to what we're thinking. It's
Mm.
all about our feelings. Our feelings. See, our emotions are basically our physical response to what we're thinking. And then what happens is our feelings is basically our exterior response to what's
Mm.
going on in our mind, what's going on in our body, and how we act it out. Thoughts lead to emotions, and emotions lead to actions or behaviors. That's why the
Yeah.
Bible says, out of the heart flows the
That's right.
issues of life.
That's
And so
right.
when we talk about that, that means that if we are emotionally septic, if we are mentally septic, if we have not dealt with things in our lives, it will impact everything about us. And you
Yeah.
wonder why you're acting out of character is because you have not dealt with some things, so you cannot heal. And then you have emotional wounds and mental wounds. And it's not only impacting you, but it's also impacting the way you interact with others.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. And I'm glad you said, because that kind of segues into the next part. So now we're in this pandemic, and it's going on year number 2.5. Let's keep going, and people are being impacted. And so how do you think the pandemic has impacted people's well-being, their emotions? Do you think, how is it impacting? Do you believe?
Well, there's a variety of ways I want to take this, but I'm going to try to be quick because I get passionate about this, as you see. Okay, so we were in this pandemic. It was traumatizing to all of us. And when we
Hmm.
talk about trauma, it's really about not the event, but our reaction to the event.
To the event,
Because
yeah.
for most of us, we like to have control. We had our routines, we had our patterns, we had things established. And when this came, it shut everything down. So
Yeah.
now this was out of our control. We were isolated, and we had to have a mirror of ourselves reflecting us every day. Some of us were even in marriages and living with family, and we could deal with people 10 hours, 8 hours out the day because you are
Right.
outside the house, right? But
Right.
then in my spiritual conversations, we had a come to Jesus moment. And God really showed us ourselves in the midst of the pandemic. And
Yeah.
if we had underlying issues that we never dealt with, it actually intensified what we were taking into our portals or in the natural, our senses, what we seen, what we hear, what we heard,
Yeah.
what we felt, what we tasted, what we touched. And if that resonated with unhealed areas in our mind, it activated some things that we had pushed away and avoided, right?
Hmm.
And we had to deal. And so this pandemic took us by surprise. We were not prepared. Everything was shut down, not just adults, children.
Yeah.
Children were impacted by this.
Yeah.
And so this pandemic has really made us do some soul searching. We
Yep.
have become more self-aware, even when we didn't want to. And we recognize how not even just the pandemic, we had racial injustices. All of this happened in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what we were seeing and what we were taking in, if it resonated with unhealed areas, it amplified what we were feeling. And then because we were so out of control, and most of us, we like to be in control, even though
That's
we
right.
don't want to admit it, right? We like to be in control.
Yes, we
We
do.
were left helpless. And because of that, it left us in a state of nervousness. It left us in a
Mm.
state of anxiety, feeling at ease. Now, I didn't say you had a disorder, and we're going to talk about that, but we felt
Right.
uneasy.
Right.
Then
Right.
the amount of grief and stress and depth,
Yes.
it became insurmountable, even for us in the church, period,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
just came and just ramshacked everything as we knew it today. And so it was so many dimensions of this pandemic that we're still reeling from. And right after this pandemic, it's already here. The next pandemic is mental health. And even
Right.
in the mental health
Right.
pandemic that we're going through is grief. So that's budding
Yeah.
in the midst of all this. So what you're doing right now is so timely. It's so needed because we need to recognize what we're dealing with and how we can use our tools, our God-given tools, for those who are in the church to understand we're not spiritualizing this thing. This is the
Yeah.
opportunity that God has given us to really deal and heal so we can be the best version of ourselves in order to do kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. And you touched on a point that I want you to go a little bit deeper in, if you don't mind. The
Sure.
next pandemic, which is the mental health pandemic, the dealing with grief. You know, we lost our matriarch a couple of years ago, and um, just yesterday, I had an emotional release just out of nowhere, just grief. Now we're
Mhm.
2 years in, but that pain is still real because you can't grieve. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We got to keep going. We have to figure out what we're doing. When do we have time to grieve, and how do we grieve in the midst of trying to be strong?
Yeah.
And see, that is the conundrum. See, when we talk about being strong, I visualize it in the capacity of oftentimes people are not comfortable with us dealing with our emotions. I teach
Mm,
this all the time when
mm,
I'm dealing with people who are grieving. So they tell you to be strong because if you actually emote, they don't know what to do with that because they were always taught you don't show your emotions. And
yeah.
so I think we need to understand that in this season of grief, it's really not about being strong. It's about allowing your feelings, allowing your thoughts to be heard, to be known, not to overwhelm you, but
Mm,
to let it out. Because when we stifle it, that's when it starts to impact our physical health, our spiritual life, our mental health. And so, in this season of mental health and grief, we need to begin to understand what is our normal as it relates to how we deal, how we heal. You don't have to wait to grieve. And
yeah.
oftentimes we are taught, and this is not our fault, we are taught to put on that face, right? And act as if everything is okay. But inside, there is a quiet storm brewing. There is a quiet storm there. And so, even your ability to emote 2 years later, that's phenomenal because you gave your body a release. A lot
Mm,
of times, our body is saying, we got a problem here. That's when we
yeah.
have high blood pressure. That's where the migraines come from because now our body, our physical body, becomes overwhelmed by the emotions, the energy
Mm,
in motion of the thoughts that we're having. And so I think in our lane, in our lives, we have to understand grief. We have to understand bereavement. That does not mean that you're a weak person. It means the fact that you're human. And
yeah.
even Jesus wept. So that gives us all the segue we need to understand that there are times, and in Ecclesiastes, it said there is a time and season for everything under the sun, a
That's
time
right.
to weep, a time to mourn. So we don't have to act as if we are stoic and we got it all together because these issues that are hitting us are real. And I
Yeah.
am giving everyone under the sound of my voice the freedom to be
Mm,
to
yeah.
be who you need to be for yourself, for your family. I cry, please. I cry. I need to cry. I need to release that. I need to, it's liquid prayers. And,
Right.
we
Right.
cannot
I
sit
like
here and
that.
act as though the deaths that we've had, the deaths that you had in your family with your mom, that wasn't impactful.
Yeah.
We can't just get busy doing things, trying to act and avoid because that's going to come out one way or the other.
Yeah.
Was that helpful to you?
That was, yes, very helpful.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Appreciate that.
And thank you for the permission to be
Yeah.
able to
Just
grieve.
be. Yes,
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
it's so
yes.
true because you're right. Even we've been taught as men to hold it in and be a man, be strong. But the strongest man I know, Jesus the Christ, he wept. And you're right. But I do, and it kind of leads into the next question in terms of the age of social media. You see different things. You see people who are faking it, who have a front of what the lifestyle is. But then you have another movement where people are actually showing their grief and they're showing their emotions. And so, how do you think social media is impacting mental health during this pandemic?
I want to segue and piggyback to something you said because it was so monumental. Our men, our minority men, like, remember, we talked about this as it relates to slavery, these behaviors. And see, this is where we have this in anger.
Mm,
Anger is a cover up emotion. And so
yes.
you telling me I can't grieve, I have to stifle how I feel. I got this energy in me and it has to go somewhere. And so I think we have handicapped our people, our men, we've kind of pushed them in the corner that the only emotion that has been acceptable, but then is socially unacceptable, is
Right.
anger. Because with
Mm.
the anger, and if we don't know how to channel it correctly, it can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand that component. And as far as social media, I think it works twofold. I love the fact that we have more men talking about therapy, talking
Mhm.
about their emotions, because it gives an opportunity for those who were not given that
Mhm.
option to talk. I
Yeah.
have a very good friend, Aaron Mew. He's another therapist, and he's a Black male, and that's his focus. That
Okay.
Black men hurt too, and
Yes.
so understanding that component and giving people an opportunity to emote. We've had 3 major celebrity deaths in like a week and a half.
Yeah.
Like, this is
Yeah.
real. This is
Yes.
real. People are hurting, and we
Yeah.
have to give people an opportunity to feel free and not bound in the area of their emotions, to be able to feel comfortable talking to someone without the stigma attached.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. And condolences go out to all those families that have persons
Yes,
that completed suicide. Really, I should say,
yes,
because I believe the young lady was Miss America. I think at one point
yes.
she was,
Hmm.
yeah,
Miss USA.
Yes,
or Miss
yes,
Hmm.
Miss
USA. I'm sorry,
USA.
yes, and she,
Hmm.
completed suicide. So we have to give space for persons to, like you say, emote and embrace them for where they are, and don't preach to them. Which kind of leads to my next question: how are the church leaders? How are they accepting your message of faith and therapy? Because, as you said, that's a stronghold for us in certain ways. We get healed in church, but yet we use it in ways that are not always healthy. So how are they embracing your message?
Based on the research I've done, and I thank you because some of them may be actually listening to me now, they actually participated in my research, and the tides have changed. They are open. They are open to understanding, to
Good.
learning about mental health. I've done a number of seminars and workshops across the United States, not just New York. I just came back from Ohio preaching during Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm going to St. Louis. And so they're wanting to know, not just for their congregants, but themselves,
Mm.
because I do see some leaders, some pastors in therapy as well, and
Oh, good.
they're hurting too. And
Yeah.
so being able to keep it all together during the pandemic for the congregants, putting on that face, that's a lot. And
Yeah.
so this has been something that has been eye-opening. The pandemic has also created opportunities for Christian therapists, licensed Christian therapists,
Mm.
licensed counselors, Christian counselors, to actually serve as guides through this process. And so they are preaching about it in their pulpits. They are having workshops. They are having
Good.
seminars in our communities. They are
Good.
understanding the impact that this is having not only on their congregants, but themselves.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And you touched on the fact that you do visit ministries to share your message. Will you share some of the topics that you provide for church leaders and their staff when you go, so that if someone is listening, they may be interested in securing your services?
Sure. I'm actually a national trainer for mental health first aid. I do mental health in the church, what it looks like. How do you understand? How I do bereavement and grief group therapy. I'm getting ready to do something along with a colleague. I just talked to her today about suicide uh, and faith,
Yeah.
and understanding that for leaders, equipping people with the necessary components to help those who are actually in distress. I do something in regards to cognitive distortions and cognitive dissonance, understanding when we're thinking 2 different things at one time, and how
Mm.
when we're wounded in certain areas of our life and we don't heal, it distorts the way we see things, the way we
Yeah.
feel things, and how we relate to people. Understanding that mental health is a physical diagnosable medical condition. When you have mental illness, it is diagnosed. So we talk about
Yeah.
those things. We talk about ways to equip leaders in regards to dealing with people who
Okay. Good.
have mental illness. We talk about formulating. I do a lot of helping with formalizing different mental health teams within churches, helping
Awesome.
them to understand how to help people who are in distress, who are part of their church or who are coming in, what to do with people who are suicidal in those cases. And so it's open. I'm getting ready to also do something about trauma informed congregational care because we
Oh,
have
wow.
all been traumatized. And it's
Yes.
time for us to understand trauma for our congregants as well as ourselves and really have effective tools to combat it.
That's awesome. We appreciate you sharing that information because you never know who's going to listen to this and how we can help one another. And on that note, as we begin to wrap this up, what kind of tips can you give persons who are dealing with their emotional health or their mental health at this stage of the pandemic? How can you help them cope at this time?
Okay, so really quickly, when we talk about mental health, we're talking about remember how we think, how we feel. Oftentimes, when it becomes debilitating, when it becomes where it's starting to impact our daily life, our daily living,
ADLs.
our yes, that's when it may be coming across the bridge into a disorder. Sounds like a very scary word, but what it is a disruption in the order of your daily life. When what
Mm,
you're feeling, what you're thinking is starting to disrupt your ability to function on a daily basis, when you can't get out of bed, when you are crying all day, when you're having thoughts of harming yourself, when you can't take care of your children, when you can't go to work, you may be crossing the bridge into developing a disorder, the
mm,
disruption in the order of your daily life. But it's not for you to diagnose yourself, it's for you to reach out and get help. So, some of the tips is to understand that you are human.
yes.
Everything that we are going through right now, universally, personally, our responses to what we're going through, it is a human reaction. This is
Mm,
not a time for us to feel we have to be strong and put on a front because all we're doing is really packing down our feelings, packing down our emotions. And guess what? They're triggering what lies beneath.
mm,
They're
yeah.
triggering what lies beneath. So,
Yeah.
what was going on with you prior to all this, now it's overloaded. And so you have to allow yourself to be human. Be human in regards to you being able to feel what you feel, not be overwhelmed by it,
Hmm.
but allow yourself to be what we call mindful. Stay in the
Mm,
present.
hmm.
Oftentimes, there's a part of our brain called the amygdala, and it's actually responsible for recall. And so, every time we have a situation in our lives that impacts us in such a manner and it makes us think of things in the past, it automatically connects in the brain. And so, that feeling, you ever understood, you ever lose someone, right? And
Hmm.
then that loss reminds you of another loss and it
Hmm.
compounds that loss. It's
Yeah.
because it knows what that feels like. And so when we don't heal from issues that have impacted us in our past, it begins to cause very, very negative reactions and connections. And so we have to stay present. We have to deal in order for us to heal. That's number two. In
Yeah.
order to heal, we got to deal. That's the name of
True.
my book that's coming out.
All
All
And
right.
right.
exactly. You have to deal. You can no longer avoid because the longer you avoid, this is something that continues to grow with you over time. These issues grow up with you, and you wonder why it's so difficult for you to break through or the Holy Spirit to break through. Is because all your defenses are in play because it hurts so bad. And so, even God can't even get in to heal because you still got to heal, right? In order to heal. So, you got to understand that you're human. You got to understand that in order to heal, you have to deal. Take things one day at a time. One day at a time. We're always planning for tomorrow. It's good to have a plan, but again, you have to stay present. You have to reckon. You have to sometimes turn off the TV when you know something is starting to impact you. You have to be aware of your triggers
Mm,
and how to those things that put you in a state of upheaval of anxiety and separate that. If that means you have to stay off social media for a minute, if you have to shut
Yeah.
down the phone calls from your
Mhm.
girlfriend or your boyfriend or your friend, or that's causing you to feel anxious. Give yourself that freedom to really feel and heal, and use your coping mechanisms. We all don't understand, we have natural coping mechanisms that we have, but we just think it's part of our normal life. It's not about avoiding.
Mm.
What do you do when you get overwhelmed? Do I physically exercise?
Mm.
Do I read my word? Do I involve myself in social activities? Not to really run away from it, but to keep your mind in a place of steadiness and wholeness where you're not so focused on what's going wrong. And then there are, read positive affirmations, fill yourself up with good things. The Bible says you think on those things whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever is, pure, whatsoever, those things,
Mm.
our mind always errors to the negative because that's the way it's used to functioning. But we have to be relentless and intentional of feeding it positivity.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We appreciate this time with you, Dr. Solomon. And so, how could persons get in contact with you in case they want to find out about your services? How can they reach you?
Okay, I have a website. They just called me today. They said, "Will you hurry up?" Because I had them updating it,
Okay,
but it should be updated by Friday. Yeah,
okay,
I'm a professor too, so I got so much going on. But now you put me under the
understood.
pressure, so now I
Okay.
need to put things in place. So you can reach me at on Facebook. I have a page, Elevated, ELEV, the number 8 for New Beginnings. TED Perspectives, Elevated Perspectives. I have a Facebook page. I do have a website. It will be back up. Or you can reach me at 631 800 1975. And also, I do have a profile on Facebook, just me. And for right now, until Friday, if you need to reach me, you can inbox me. I get a number of inboxes. Right now, I'm pretty full, full for individual therapy. I have a waiting list. However, I am
Awesome.
still facilitating workshops. I'm still doing group. I have some groups coming up as well
Okay.
within the near future, and I have a huge conference going to be in play during the summer, Elevated Perspectives, and we're going to deal with the 8 dimensions of wellness, and I'm going to bring speakers in to get us ready to enter to a season of a new beginning. Even in the pandemic, our
Awesome.
mind can still be right.
That's right.
Yes, we can have a renewed mind in the midst of all of the
Yes,
chaos.
perilous
Yes, yes,
times.
yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes,
And I
because we
wanted to
have
leave you with one scripture, I'm sorry, that I have been focusing on, and it's Isaiah 26:3.
Hmm.
And I love the amplified version of this. The amplified version of this really, really puts us in a place where we need to go. And it just says, you will keep in perfect and constant peace the one whose mind is steadfast, that is committed and focused on you, both inclination and character, because he trusts and take refuge in you with hope and confident expectation. In order for us to make it through this, we can't act as if we're not shaken by what's going on. But when God is the construct that we use to keep our mind in perfect peace, and we trust him. Some of us have trust issues that impact us because people have damaged us, people have mishandled us, and
Yeah.
it's hard for some of us to really trust people in the spirit when people in the natural let us down. And so
Yeah.
we talk about what are those things, because in order for us to be kept in perfect peace, we have to trust him to do it, right? And so
Mhm.
I love this scripture because it talks about the construct of God being the foundation that keeps us in perfect peace.
Yeah.
Not, nope, I'm not going to think about it, avoiding it, but understanding that when our construct of the person or the person who's holding us up is God, and because he is the solid rock, he is the cornerstone,
Mhm.
he has the strength to do that. We just have to yield to him in order to do it. I'm sorry, you were saying
wow,
something.
no more powerful wrap up than that. It was
Yeah.
Isaiah, what was this?
26:3.
This is great.
26:3, Isaiah 26:3. Because that at the end of the day, that's what we need to strengthen our faith. His word pulls us out of dark places. It keeps us high when we're high. Um, that's all we have if, as people of faith. So thank you, Isaiah
Yes.
26:3. Dr. Solomon, our time has been so fruitful and productive.
Mhm.
We packed a whole lot in a short amount of time. We appreciate you for being here and
I
just
would
sharing
love
your
to come
nuggets of
back,
truth.
and I would love
Yes,
to
and we'd
come
love
there.
to have you.
That book,
Right.
that book comes
When
out.
your book comes out,
Let
hit
us
us
know.
up and we would love
Yes.
to have you back
Oh,
on
it's
to help
coming. It's
spread the
coming.
message of that because we need it.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
oftentimes we don't find the marrying of faith and therapy. So when we can find that and find
We
someone who provides
coexist.
the
That's
service,
right.
absolutely, we want to let the world know that there is someone who can see life from your perspective. It's
Yeah.
not just one way. We understand the importance of faith in our daily walk.
And
I
an
think
elevated perspective because we have to
yes.
elevate.
Yes, we
Yes.
have to look up.
Yes.
That's right.
Absolutely. So we thank you, audience, for being here with us, with Dr. Solomon. I hope that you have gotten something out of today. We always love hearing from you. So if you're watching this replay, go ahead and leave us a message on what you picked up or what you will apply to your life from Dr. Solomon's talk. Also, reach out to her. She is available, especially if you are in that frigid cold New York area.
Well, I
Or the
travel. I
the tri-state
travel.
area.
So I travel.
That's right. The
And
tri-state
she
area. So
travels. And if you are in ministry or you believe that your ministry leadership can benefit,
yes.
contact her
Yes.
because we need this
We need it.
information.
Yeah,
We need to be strong in our families, in our communities, and in our churches. So we want to thank you again for being here on tonight. Do remember to like and share this episode with someone else. And join us back here next Monday, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. God bless and good night.
God
Good
bless.
night.
Have a good
Thank
Take
night.
care.
you.
Good night.